Welcome to today's Fight Club. You must engage in hand-to-hand combat, meaning you can either wrestle someone of your choosing or a bitch slap match. Choose your opponent! Sar Keef was standing in the middle of the gathering as he began to match people up. Slick kicked off the matches by choosing Benedict Cumhersnatch and taking off his shirt. 3, 2, 1, go! And like two drunken titans, they began to grapple while everyone cheered and laughed. Holy shit, I thought. I'm home. There have been a few constants in my life. They include my dad's side-parted haircut that he's had since he was 6, my brother's uncanny ability to always hit me in the eye, all of my tias hating each other, being weird to my core, and my love of writing. I was a strange kid, and I never quite felt that I fit in very well. Not an eating banana peels for fun kind of kid, like Nicole in my class. I wasn't gross or anything. I just kind of lived in my head. I was a space cadet at times, in a void where I never felt I'd be seen. I only found solace in writing. I wrote jokes, letters, lists, and ramblings about what went on and kept an iron grip on my journals and scrap writing so no one would find it and make it even harder for me to fit in. Or so I thought I did. One day in middle school, during my science class filled with stinking adolescents and too many hormones, I lent a piece of paper to my classmate, the beautiful Mona Lisa. She was popular and had silky long hair that Pantene commercials would advertise. As I was passing the notebook paper to her, I didn't notice that my joke list of why I like skinny guys was on there. 1 minute later, Mona Lisa began to recite out loud to the class, "Skinny guys are the best because..." Everyone in class looked at Mona Lisa, where she then spun her head to look at me. I sank as low as a 5'9" freak of a middle schooler could into a desk chair and felt my face flare up with embarrassment. It was my nightmare. The kids laughed, and then I swore to myself to never lend anyone a piece of paper again. I would rather eat my notebook page by page without water in a desert than be in that position again. Even so, during high school, I decided to become a journalist. I began attending Southwestern College, I took my journalism classes, and was invited to join The Sun, the college newspaper, shortly after. I craved to be creative. Growing up, I always had the jokes, lists, and ramblings, but I never had anyone or anywhere to show them to without embarrassment. Instead, all of my writing lived in a huge sketchbook filled with collages and anything else that spilled out of my head. It seemed like I would never find an outlet for them, and it made me sad. The Southwestern College newspaper ended up being disappointing, and it felt like I would never be accepted anywhere. I transferred from Southwestern College shortly after to go to STSU. I didn't want to join the Daily Aztec because I had hit my limit. I had realized that I no longer wanted to adhere to the rules. I wanted to cut loose, despite being a journalism major. One sunny day, I was walking down the main drag of STSU when I saw a group of people passing something out. When I got closer, a person in a monkey onesie, wearing sunglasses, who had a thick head of curls peeking out, thrust a thin newspaper into my hands and said, "Get reading or get fucked." The publication was called The Motherfucking Koala. During my break, I looked at the cover of the paper. It was dark, wild, and made little sense. The staff writers' names were on the first page. No One's Bitch, Edward Snowden, Texas Toast, and Pumpkin Spice Ugg Boot, to name a few. Inside, it was a patchwork quilt of foul, obnoxious, and unsavory subjects that ranged from raunchy misconnections, the best bathrooms to shit in on campus, and whatever Munchus Crungus Cannibalungus was about. The Motherfucking Koala, that is their official name, also had chapters at UCSD and CSU San Marcos, at one point. The other chapters had been sued by their schools or had their student-sanctioned organization credentials removed because of criticism over their hedonistic, nihilistic, and absurdist humor that pushed them to sue their universities back for their rights to freedom of speech. I was in love, It was the antithesis of the straight and narrow confines of the sun. On one of the pages, I saw an invitation to join the organization. I immediately reached out and got a cryptic message from a Keith about sending previous samples of my work and that they would hash it out and reach out soon. Seeing their email with the invitation to join for a meeting filled me with glee. However, on the day I was nervous about who I'd meet behind all of the deliciously vile and lewd writing that filled the pages of the newspaper. I showed up too early and sat in my car with my stomach in knots. It felt like an eternity sitting in the dark street in my Mini Cooper. What if they didn't like me? What if they were collected, cool, and would disapprove of who I was? Would it be Mona Lisa 2.0? When I finally walked inside of the dilapidated house, the staff was a ragtag group of people. Band kids who played the tuba in the marching band, meatheads, LARPers who wore elf ears, cheerleaders, engineers, business majors who tucked in their shirts, and just plain randomness. There was a definite tinge of weirdness to each person, but also camaraderie. Was this where I could let my freak flag fly? Would I be Koalafied to fit in? Sar Keith began welcoming the new recruits to our first meeting. We sat on stained carpets where a drink or a bodily fluid had left its mark. The staff stood in a circle around us and introduced themselves by their pen names. Each person had an air of pride when saying their name. They had made it into this absurd and legendary newspaper, and they loved it. You could just tell. Mothman slam piece, soy kombucha latte, depression sandwich, ethos pathos for locos, beef, etc. They were all seemingly pretty straight-laced people, but they had these alter egos that allowed them to be revolting. As interns, we were supposed to submit to prove our worthiness of joining the organization for the next issue. So our Keith laid down the rules that were set in stone. 1, no racism, no sexism, no homophobia, don't use slurs. 2, no rape, no school shootings. These are off-the-table topics. 3, no mocking victims. Mock perpetrators of things all you like. Put shitty people on blast. Punch up, but never punch down. I knew I was going to love it. We were also told that we weren't allowed to pick our pen names, but as I was getting ready to leave, I joked with Keith, who stood at least 5 inches shorter than me, but felt like a giant. Hey, if you can't think of anything else, can my name be Boobs Radley? Named after the ghostly character from To Kill a Mockingbird. They chuckled and said, that's a pretty good one. We'll see. I don't exactly remember where the name came from, whether I heard it in passing or not. I knew that I loved it because I had a considerable rack, and that having a name with the iteration of rad in it seemed perfect to me. It was partly an homage to who I was, and a promise of who I wanted to be. I agonized over my first article. In the end, it was clear what I would write about. I decided to talk about my evil ex-boyfriend's English grandmother who called me inbred over Christmas dinner. It was titled, "Fa la 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 fuck you, you racist goblin." I wouldn't know if it was accepted until the day the newspapers came out. On publication day, the November sky was gloomy for the time of year. I walked up to the gathering of the people who I would hope would be my tribe. They smiled as I approached and handed me a stack of papers with a Santa Claus character trying to stab a turkey with a koala head in a winter wonderland while SDSU burned in the background. They then gave me instructions on how to pass out the periodical. The more animated you get, the better. People are excited to get this thing. Show them that you care and say funny shit. Sar Keith told me from their tiny frame. I only partially listened because I was itching to know if my piece had made it inside. When they walked away, I immediately dropped the stack and began to flip through the paper to try and find it. Don't want to take your finals? Sacrifice yourself to the moon by Little Dybbuk. Nope. A letter to my special little fucks by Special Gay. Nope. Dude, go have sex with your entire graduating class by Beef. Shit, did I not get in? I thought. If I hadn't gotten in, I would have felt stuck out in orbit, a space cadet with no place to call my own planet. I had to get in. I was desperate to get in. I found my people. Now I needed to find my place among them. Just when I was giving up hope, there it was. The racist goblin title, my article, a Microsoft Paint-esque illustration, and the pen name, Boobs Radley. I was in. The months would fly by, and I would have sexually satirical stories in nearly every single issue. They were bizarre and unhinged. It made me feel free to be able to write whatever insane topic I could think of. The articles continued the trend of outlandish titles. It was intoxicating. In the article, Fuck Everywhere Else, I wrote the following sage advice. Are you ever getting plowed on your Target extra long tall sheets and wonder if they're losing their edge? Are you tired of seeing the same ironic smash mouth poster peering down at you while someone is writing you like fucking Seabiscuit? Sex is awesome, but damn, sometimes you gotta change the scenery to keep it spicy. That's why sometimes the best thing to do is fuck everywhere except your bed. Yeah. In class, I saw two girls reading the article and laughing. However, it wasn't in the mocking way I experienced when I was younger. It was laughing at my creativity that I purposefully wrote, and it was hitting home. I was becoming more comfortable expressing myself in the way that I'd hoped for my entire life. I unabashedly talked and made fun of sex, which in the past had been a taboo. But not here. I was getting bolder. The next piece was a combination of dating profile bios, someone on coke, and a Dr. Bronner soap label titled, How to Make the World Your Nightclub, a bro's guide to making the real world suck on your nuts. What Your Shoes Say About Your Sex Life was an observational piece on the shoes I saw on campus and the imagined gross sexual habits of their wearers. The Haunting of Dorm Room 420 was a shitty screenplay about a haunted dorm roommate named Veronica, subtle because my name is Victoria, who would watch cybergoth dancing videos on YouTube, which was an actual hobby of mine, and would end up smothering her roommate named Diane, which I did not do. Even the Ask an Old Bitch column had questions coming in from our email or Twitter. Home for the Holidays, an article where I partnered with ASMR, was an instructional guide on how to have sex in your parents' house when you're home on break. I don't know where anywhere else I could get away with writing. I, Boobs Radley, your queen of fucks and mistress of sexual mayhem, and my wee piss goblin, ASMR, have created a guide for getting your jimmies rustled while back at the nest. My piece, The Fat Bitch's Guide to Being Fucked, ended up being used in a media and sexuality class that was taught in the journalism department. It was like my two worlds collided and I loved it. When new recruits would come in and the staff would share their pen names at the meetings, when I would say I was Boobs Radley, and they would say, oh my god, I love your articles, I finally felt like my writing was being recognized for its creativity, and in turn, I felt recognized and accepted for who I was. Despite all the fun I was having, I began to notice that the other koalas and I were in a different place in our lives. A couple of them were looking for fake IDs and hooking up with strangers, while I worried about a future career, my serious boyfriend, and more than where I would be getting my next drink. At our Christmas party, some of the staff decided that the white elephant gift exchanges were gifts that you could fit and wrap in a tube sock. I immediately thought of what to do. I drove to the romantic sex shop on University Ave with a sock in hand and measured what would fit into it. The small, colorful wall of vibrators called out to me and stacks of condoms would be perfect. My tube sock ended up being the most sought after, while I ended up with a roll of duct tape squeezed into an enormous sock. What else did I expect from my people? Looking at the low-effort roll of duct tape in my hands, it was beginning to feel like I was growing out of the koala. Eventually, the twice-a-week meetings became too frequent, and my work and school schedule was too demanding. It was that my path was beginning to diverge from my time in the koala and my time in periodicals in general. It was just that my time to be recognized for writing about wearing Birkenstocks having an impact on your sex life was over. My writing hobby has evolved, only a tiny bit, but I have found other communities where I'm also accepted for being myself. I had my people out there all along. The Boobs Radley chapter of my life was a time when I realized that maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought I was. There are plenty of freaks, weirdos, and Koalafied people who are out there, and that is a comfort. In the words of my alter ego, go forth and sucketh and fucketh, my little heathen kittens. Tell your hookups that Boobs Radley sent ya.